Hi BookTube! I'm so happy to finally be back. I have my shelves done, my new reading chair just came in, and I'm all set up and ready to film some videos again. I even got a little ring light, so if you see a little reflection, that's what that is. I'm not sure exactly how to use it yet, but it's what we're working with what we have. So this is just a simple January, February wrap-up. Yeah, and they were very, very busy months for me. It's why I didn't film at all. So I was actually moving across the province. We sold our house, we closed on the house January 20th, and we left that day. Took 2 days to drive to New Brunswick from Ontario, and then we stayed in an Airbnb for a while, and then we got here, but our truck was delayed by like 10 days, I think it was, so we didn't have any furniture, any books. So yeah, my reading's been a little all over the place, as in not much happening. Yeah, so let's just get into what I read in January and February. January, in no particular order, I read Fun Home by Alison Bechdel. This is a graphic memoir of Alison growing up in her father's kind of eclectic house, and the story of her coming out, and also the story of her discovering her father's sexuality. He doesn't necessarily come out in the traditional sense. I didn't really enjoy it, to be honest. It was very repetitive, and that was because it was non-linear, and I like non-linear stories, but she kept like repeating similar themes and storylines over and over again, and I was just kind of like, well, you know, you could have just told this in a linear fashion, and it would make more sense, those themes, instead of just jumping to like random things here and there. Yeah, I didn't like that. It was an interesting story, I just wish it was told more like cohesively. Yeah. Then I read Girls Burn Brighter by Shobha Rao, and I read another one of her books that's one of my all-time favorites. It's a collection of short stories called An Unrestored Woman. So this book was about two young women in India, and they form this really intense friendship. And they get separated through trauma and marriage and trauma. Marriage is a trauma. And find their way eventually back to each other across continents. It was very good. It was a very compelling read. The only problem I had with it was that I'm just sick of reading about sexual assault, and you know, especially if it doesn't add anything to the story, and I felt that it didn't really add anything to the story. Yeah, and it could have been a very similar story if those parts had been taken out. Then I read All the Real Indians Died Off by Roxanne Dunbar Ortez. It's a good beginner book for learning about Indigenous issues. What she does is she takes like these different myths that are perpetrated about the Indigenous population of North America, and then like addresses them and how they aren't true. But I was already well aware of all these things, so yeah, I didn't it didn't really add anything to my own knowledge base. I felt could have been done better with that is that it could have restated the myth at the end, and then why it was false, like in a kind of like succinct summary, but it didn't. Really felt disjointed in each argument. Like it was like someone arguing with ADHD. Like she'd say one point, and then she'd say another point, and then she'd say a different point, but they weren't all really connected. It felt very disjointed like that, and I think if she had structured it better, it would have benefited from that. And now I'm facing the typical BookTube problem of my battery flashing at me, so I'm going to change the battery, and I'll be right back. Okay, so apologies if angles and stuff have changed. Still getting used to getting back into filming. The next book I read was actually one that I found at the Airbnb, and I just saw it and went, why not? I'll try and read this. And I think it was like we had 3 days left, and so I picked it up, and that's One by One by Ruth Ware. And that's kind of a stereotypical thriller. It's dual perspectives of people trapped in an inn after an avalanche, and then someone begins killing them off one by one, obviously. Yeah, it was fast-paced, but it wasn't the greatest written book. I never really get along with thrillers. You know, just read them to kind of get where the plot is and see what's happening. That's the only reason I continue reading them and don't DNF them when I really think I should. Then I listened to 2.5 books on the drive from Ontario to New Brunswick. The first one was Firebreak by Nicole Corner Stace, and yeah, I was just finishing that one up on the audiobook from like listening to it while packing and stuff like that, and it is great. I keep thinking about this book, and what I'm about to say may sound like an insult, but it's not. It is very comforting, formulaic science fiction. Like, you know where the story is going, you know what's going to happen, but it's very well written and well done. It's about a young gamer who gets caught up in a revolution, and it's very conversational, very easy to listen to. It was a very good audiobook. I highly recommend the audiobook because it feels like someone is talking to you. Then I also listened to Unorthodox. I finished that one by Devora Feldman. I don't think I'm pronouncing her name right, even though I listened to the audiobook, but that was a month ago now. And that's a memoir of a young, supremely Orthodox Jewish girl leaving the cult. Basically, it's a cult. Like, they try to chase her down and everything, and you know, don't want her to leave, but she leaves. Very good audiobook, very interesting story. I learned a lot about that Orthodox community. It did inspire a show on Netflix, and I did watch that show, but it is a completely different story. It is very loosely inspired by it. So you can have, if you've watched the show, it's nothing like the book. And then the other book I'm halfway through. I don't know when I'll get a chance to finish it. I haven't been listening to a lot of audiobooks for no reason other than just I haven't. And that's Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I loved The Martian, and I thought this would be a great audiobook to bring in the car, but I only got halfway through it by the time we got to New Brunswick. You know, February has been a not very good reading month for me, mostly because I didn't have my books. I thought I'd have them by now, so I didn't have a lot of books to choose from. And I'm filming this like a week, I believe it's the 23rd, so we still have a few more days, and I think I'm going to finish these two, and that's probably it. That's In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado, let me make sure I pronounce that right, which is a very interesting story. Lots of people talked about it on BookTube. So she's in an abusive queer relationship, and she's writing about it in different formats. So like Dream House's Famous Last Words, Dream House's Folktale Taxonomy, what's this one? Dream House's Spy Thriller, and each one's like a little snippet of the story of her relationship, and then kind of like thoughts on the relationship as well. It's quite interesting. I don't have my full thoughts on it yet because I haven't finished it. I apologize. I probably should not do a February wrap-up, but there's only 2 books that I'm going to finish. The other one is Labyrinth by, sorry, I forgot his name for a second, Jorge Luis Borges. It's a series of short stories. Each one makes you think about different things. He presents really interesting ideas in each of them. So like, oh, and this one I have saved is The Library Babel, and it's about a library that contains every possible iteration of every language that uses the Roman alphabet, even future languages that don't exist yet, nonsense, you know, every combination of letters that you can put together is in this library in books. And it's fascinating. It's really cool. What is all this? The Lottery in Babylon. That's about, it starts off as kind of like a normal lottery, and they're like, wait, it's not fair that we only give good things, we should give bad things too. And then it eventually evolves into like the lottery takes over people's lives and like decides whether they live or die, how they live or die, if that death will get magically overturned. Not magically, because it's all done through lottery. Yeah, it's really cool. I really have been enjoying his short stories, and if you're ever hesitant to pick them up, like, don't. Like, it's very kind of straightforward language, but the ideas are the things that are like the most interesting in there. So that's it for January and February. I'm glad one of my goals this year was to slow down reading, because that definitely happened. We'll see what happens in March and the rest of the year, and thank you for watching.